The Lions defensive coordinator did not hold back about Lamar Jackson ahead of the Ravens and Lions week 3 matchup, paying the ultimate respect. We talk about that and so much more coming up on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Ravens. Welcome into the show. I'm your host, Kevin Ostreicher of Ravens Wire, here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks so much for being here on this bonus edition Saturday episode of the show, making Locked On Ravens a part of your day and your first listen each and every single day. And also thank you out there to all the everydayers, first-time listeners, and for somewhere in the middle, thank you as well. 5 days a week plus more here of daily Ravens content and coverage. So be sure you hit the like and subscribe button in video form and follow along in audio form as well. Same show. Want to tell everyone what we're going to be diving into on the show today because we have another jam-packed one, and it's a bonus episode, but we still, with the week being the way that it is for the Ravens, them playing on Monday night. Obviously, yesterday on Friday marked the second day of practice for the Ravens. They'll practice again today on Saturday. But in the first part of the show, we're going to dive into the Lions defensive coordinator not holding back on Lamar, but in a good way. He just praised Lamar Jackson and showed the utmost respect for him. So we'll talk about that in the first part of the show. Then in the second part of the show, Jared Goff got very honest on this matchup with the Ravens, what it means to him and the Lions. He got honestly pretty brutally honest on it. And then finally, we'll talk about some injury updates for the Ravens and more as well. And also, today's episode of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Let's dive into this here now. Lions defensive coordinator, who, if you don't know, is Kelvin Sheppard. Now, Kelvin Sheppard actually played in the NFL for multiple seasons. His last stop was in Detroit. Now he's Detroit's defensive coordinator. Funny how it works out that way. He was an inside linebacker. Put together a pretty solid career. I mean, he had 429 career tackles, had a year of over 100 in 2015. So he obviously has ascended the coaching ranks very quickly. And he was asked about the Ravens and Lamar and just to kind of talk about everything that, that team that the Ravens provide and are able to bring as challenges that the Lions can face head on. And Kelvin Sheppard just, again, he did not hold back. He honestly shared some information that I think a lot of coordinators probably actually share with Kelvin Sheppard. So he talked, first of all, about the fact that, at least from his perspective, Lamar Jackson obviously is extremely hard to stop. He said, quote, "What does Lamar do well? Everything. What does Lamar not do well? Nothing." So that was kind of the first thing. He goes, quote, "He's hard to prepare for." He actually said that he's gotten a lack of sleep this week due to him. So look, he's not holding back on anything related to Lamar Jackson. You're going all in on praising him and showing him respect. He said, quote, "Pass game, he can do it in the pocket, out of the pocket." He made it clear. He said literally have the utmost respect. And then he said, it was asked a question about, do you want to making him one-dimensional? How is that going to work? What do you want to do there? And he said he understood the question, but obviously he said it was very, very hard to do that and honestly make the Ravens as a team one-dimensional, and shouted out a lot of the guys on the offensive side of the ball. He shouted out Derrick Henry, gave a shout out to Zay Flowers, Mark Andrews, obviously Lamar again. Also talked about how one of the strengths of the team is actually up front in the offensive line. And I can already see, people are going to say, "Oh, come on, the offensive line." And yes, it's been a little bit of a struggle for some on the offensive line over the first 2 weeks, but hopefully they can improve on that against the Lions in week number 3. And we know Lamar Jackson is incredible, in my opinion, the best quarterback in the NFL right now. It's not particularly close. We've gone over all the stats for him and everything that he's brought to the table, not only over these first 2 weeks, but I'll scroll back to it here so I can read it out one more time because it really is just that incredible that Lamar has been doing this. Over Lamar's last 20 games, he has 4,927 passing yards, 1,033 rushing yards, 57 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, and 125.1 passer rating. I kind of want to memorize that. I feel like I've read it out enough where I should try to memorize it. 57 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, 1,033 rushing yards, 4,927 passing yards, 125.1 passer rating. Did I get it? I think I got it. I think I'm going to go back and listen to it, but I think I got it, not reading it off the thing. So Look at that. We're already getting it down here. But that's the greatness that Lamar has brought to the table. And you honestly want to take it a step further here, we can. Let's talk about his games against the Lions. Lamar is 2-0 in his career against the Lions, and he has had plenty of success. Now, that first game back in 2021 wasn't necessarily the greatest game for Lamar, right? He went 16-31, 287 yards. He had a touchdown and an interception. That one was obviously the game where Justin Tucker hit the 66-yard field goal. That was, 4th and 19, where Lamar was able to throw that ball to Sammy Watkins to get a first down and continue that game-winning drive. So the Ravens honestly had no business winning that game, but they did it anyway because Lamar Jackson put on his superhero cape and he did the thing. And that was a game that they won, and that was the first one of Lamar's career against Detroit. Now, in 2023, that was when the Lions traveled to M&T Bank Stadium, which they will be doing again here. Lamar was dominant, 21 of 27 for 357 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. He was practically perfect on the day, and he was making the Lions pay. That was a demolition, a blowout, and we'll talk about that a little more in the second part of the show because it appears the Lions have not forgotten about that whatsoever. But with Lamar, you do have to prepare for him in so many different ways, and it's so hard to defend against him, at least this version of himself, right? Because you can go back a couple of years ago. In fact, it feels like many years ago now, but you can go back to that Miami game on Thursday Night Football years ago, where that whole game, Miami just ran cover 0 the entire time. Blitz, 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 blitz. And Lamar couldn't handle it. The Ravens couldn't handle it. And that's something that he and the team absolutely, they worked so hard on that to say, we don't want to be beaten that way again. We don't want to have that weakness, right? Every quarterback deals with pressure and has to deal with it. And honestly, look, pressure is a quarterback's worst nightmare. Now, when you're as good as Lamar Jackson is, and this applies to other quarterbacks too, but I think Lamar kind of does it the best here. When you're a quarterback like Lamar and you can just kind of look at pressure and say, that's funny, I'm going to just run over here and go do my thing. It's different. But, every quarterback still, like Lamar would rather just sit back in the pocket, have 5 seconds to throw and just, deliver strike. And he does that, right? But it's very hard to game plan for this Ravens offense. And that's why I think a lot of people will say that, man, the Ravens are getting too cute here. Why are they running away and going away from what their identity is? And that's stuff that we've seen them do before. And that's why a lot of people, I believe, say that the team that beats the Ravens, or the team that is best at beating the Ravens, is the Ravens themselves. So I truly think that the Ravens play their game. We'll talk a little bit more about matchups in the final part of the show and throughout the rest of the weekend leading up to Monday night. This is a game that, like Kelvin Shepard and this Lions team, and he talked about this too, where it's essentially their plan to go out there and execute the plan that they have established, right? There's not like some, this is like a book on how to stop Lamar Jackson. And no, Lamar is such a good quarterback. And for all these good quarterbacks, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow, et cetera, like there's not a specific book on how to stop those guys. You can exploit certain weaknesses, but Lamar's worked tirelessly over the course of his career to kind of whittle down those weaknesses one by one by one by one. And this is kind of the benefit that we see here. So it was really cool. And you can tell the respect that Kelvin Shepard has here for Lamar Jackson. He pulled out all the stops, right? He didn't hold back on any of it. He really went down the list here, not just for Lamar Jackson, but for the offense in general. And look, him saying that he is the whole sleep thing and that it's essentially like it's a saying. He's not, he isn't sleep. It's the lack of sleep this week. You kind of have to think. You have to think outside the box on how to stop a player like Lamar Jackson, right? Every quarterback has their own specific game plan, but clearly Lamar, like we hear this from a bunch of different coordinators, and Kelvin Shepard said all the right things, but that Lions defense has ballers on it. I'm sure they feel confident in being able to stop Lamar, because I think you have to go into it. Look, even if you don't feel confident, you have to force yourself to feel confident, because if you don't go into a game with confidence, you're going to lose, right? But it's just, I keep saying it over and over again. It's so hard to stop him. It's so hard to prepare for him. And especially with these NFC teams, right? Something that we'll bring up over the course of the rest of the weekend is Lamar Jackson, yes, is 24-2 as a starter against the NFC. Why is that? Well, one of the reasons I think is because, a team like the Steelers, who Lamar Jackson has had trouble with over the course of his career, they see Lamar over and over and over again, twice per season at least, sometimes 3 times. And you kind of are able to not get used to it, but play against it and figure it out and not have to be kind of surprised by it. These NFC teams who have only played Lamar once or twice or maybe 3 times, you see him on tape, you're like, oh, that's fast. Then he gets on the field and just runs by you, and you're like, this is even faster than a tape. What the heck's going on here? So that's kind of the reason why Lamar again will be looking to improve his stellar record against the NFC in week number 3, and hopefully that is the case. Coming up, though, Jared Goff is going to try to do everything in his power to stop the Ravens from winning this game, and he certainly has not forgotten the drubbing the Lions took at the hands of the Ravens last time around. And Jared Goff also probably didn't forget that long field goal at the end of the first game. So we'll talk about what Jared Goff had to say about the Ravens, getting brutally honest on his team and the Ravens. Stay tuned, a lot coming up on the show. First, this show is brought to you by DoorDash. It's almost the weekend. Time to look back and crown this week's MVP on Who Delivered, powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving more every time you order, these players delivered when it mattered most. Let's break it down. For the Ravens, Jake Hummel delivered in a big way. And obviously his blocked punt, I think, really opened the floodgates for the Ravens in their week 2 win against the Browns. And when the pressure was on, Jake Hummel, he delivered in a big way, giving the Ravens the momentum. There was no hesitation, no delay. Jake Hummel went out there, blocked that punt. He took it. And if you've been watching Jake Hummel, I mean, this is a guy that's a special teams ace. It certainly was not a fluke. Jake Hummel, he is absolutely on a streak. And just like Jake Hummel delivered for the Ravens, DoorDash delivers your Saturdays with DoorDash Streaks. You save every Saturday you order, stack it up all season, and you could save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday. Keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply. Promo period through 11/18. And the show is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel's making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because it fits however you like to bet. Player props, building the same game parlay, or even jumping in live as the action unfolds. Makes every game more exciting, whether you're watching your team or just keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup. It's quick, easy, and the best way to add a little more energy to Sundays. And that Ravens and Lions game, obviously a massive Monday night showdown. And for the spread in this game, the Ravens have been holding strong. They are 5.5-point favorites at home. So maybe you like the Lions as that road underdog, but I really like the Ravens in this game. I think they're going to try their hardest to get to 2-1 and make sure they get there. The roster's looking good. Lamar's playing well. I'm going to give the Ravens the win here, and I like that number over on FanDuel. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. Moving along on Locked On Ravens, Kevin Oestreicher still here with you on this Saturday bonus edition of the show. Hopefully everyone's having a good weekend and it's off to a good start. Obviously, we get some stress-free football on Sunday here from a Ravens perspective as Ravens play Monday night against the Lions. The Ravens will practice again. Their final practice of the week leading up to Monday will be today. So thank you again for everybody for being here on this bonus edition of the show and giving me some time here to talk with you about the Ravens. You know, this is what we do here on Locked On Ravens 5 days per week plus more. We obviously have the regular show Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. Eastern time. We have these bonus episodes on the weekend when the headlines permit. We also have Locked On Ravens watch along. So during the games, we watch along every single play. We react to them live. We'll have that again on Monday night. Be sure you tune in for that. And then we'll have the instant reaction shows right after Locked On Ravens squad show with myself, Sam Njoku, and Kadri Ismail, who's a former Ravens receiver. We got all the content you need here Ravens-wise on Locked On Ravens. So be sure, again, hit the like and subscribe button in video form and follow along in audio form. But let's talk about Jared Goff getting honest on the Ravens and kind of what has transpired for his Detroit Lions over the last few matchups. And again, Jared Goff was the quarterback in both of the most recent games of the Ravens and Lions. Not a rivalry. I mean, it's just it's two teams playing football, right? It's AFC, NFC, maybe could be a Super Bowl rematch, but the Ravens and Lions will be matching up for the third time since 2021. So Goff spoke to reporters and got really honest about kind of what his mindset is heading into this game. Talked about both the game itself, the last time Lions played them, and then talked about Lamar as well. So first of all, the Detroit game, they lost 38-6 back in 2023. Jared Goff says, quote, "They kicked our butt. They got after us early and often. We certainly remember that. We just kind of went in there and they took it to us. We've got a lot of respect for their team. I'd like to feel they feel the same way about us, but we got to go in there and prove it and show them that we obviously can hang with them." So look, again, saying the right things, but being like, man, you know what? Hopefully for the Ravens, hopefully they feel the same way about us. But, with the way the game went, maybe we need to go in there and prove it is essentially what Jared Goff said there. And I mean, look, I like that mentality, right? It's something where Goff obviously, he should be frustrated with how those games went, particularly the one in 2023, right? That game was a game that I remember it was all the Lions. They're this team and they're going to give the Ravens this like really big challenge. They're going to beat the Ravens. And the Ravens just went into M&T Bank Stadium that day and just absolutely demolished them. It was not even close. We read out Lamar's stats earlier. It was unreal. And then from Jared Goff's perspective, actually, I will quickly pull up his stats in the game. And actually, it was literally Jahmyr Gibbs it was 38-6 again, as I said. Jahmyr Gibbs had a 21-yard run, and then they failed the 2-point, and that was it. I remember in this game specifically, by the way, this was one of the first, it probably wasn't the first, but it was the first, clear, because this was a statement game for the Ravens. This was the first clear instance I can remember in a statement game, and there again, probably were some before this, but the Ravens forced a team to start going for it on fourth down. Like literally, I think in the second quarter, 4:57 left is when they went for it on fourth down in the second quarter, because the Ravens scored touchdowns on their first 4 drives of the game. And all of those were at least 68 yards or more. At least. They actually had an 8-play, 102-yard touchdown drive. I think because there was probably a penalty. I'm trying to look to see. It was probably something where there was a penalty and then they had to gain more yards on it that way. Yeah, there was a penalty on Ronnie Stanley. So they ended up getting pushed back a little bit. So they had in the box score an 8-play, 102-yard touchdown drive, which is just absolutely unreal. And that to me is kind of the dominance that the Ravens put on display there. Yeah, Jared Goff has a right to be like, yeah, like I remember that game. Don't want to have that happen again. Like that was pretty embarrassing is essentially what Jared Goff is saying here. And I don't blame him for feeling that way, because when you force a team to start going for it on fourth down, pretty much in the middle of the second quarter because they're getting beat so badly, that's a game that I think everyone on that roster is probably going to remember. So they're going to come in motivated, right? And not that teams haven't come in motivated before at M&T Bank Stadium and play the Ravens, and the Ravens just handed it to them again. But you got to have that factor as well, that they are also going to be playing extremely hard to get to 2-1 here, much like the Ravens will be. Goff also talked about Lamar. He said, quote, "He's incredible. His legs get a lot of attention, but I don't know if his passing ability gets the attention it may deserve. He's as good of a passer as there is in this league. Our defense has their hands full with him." Look, all these guys on the Lions right now, they're saying the right things. And it's not just like, oh, we want to say the right things to not, give the Ravens Baltimore material, but we feel a certain way. No, these guys genuinely, like you can tell they genuinely feel this way about the Ravens, about Lamar Jackson. There's a respect about this team because this is a team that a lot of teams circle on their calendar. I'm sure the Lions have had this game circled on their calendar, right? Like with the Chiefs, the Ravens have that game circled on their calendar for sure. And that's kind of like, okay, the Chiefs are that team for the Ravens, right? Well, for the Lions, they haven't been able to beat the Ravens, right? That's a team, and it's not like they meet them every single season. It's not like, again, it's a rivalry, but against teams, like, to me, I think the Ravens are a better team than the Lions, personally. Does that mean they're going to win on Monday? Of course not. You have to play the game. But I think that with what the Ravens have on their roster, they should be able to win. But there are other factors like the motivation, like being able to play your game. Is the Lions game plan good enough for Lamar Jackson? It's very hard, again, to do that, so we're going to have to see. But, again, really nice words there from Jared Goff. And that's kind of the mindset across the league, I think, for most, if not all, quarterbacks when they're asked about Lamar, right? It's about the passing ability and all that. It's like, yeah, that deserves respect, right? One of the most electrifying players in the league, and certainly when quarterbacks talk about him, they echo those same sentiments. So again, really cool to see Jared Goff talk about that. And honestly, really cool to hear Jared Goff's honesty about it, right? Like not saying, oh, it was a bad week, they caught us on a bad week. No, Jared Goff saying like, yeah, they kicked our butt. So we'll see how it all works out, but that's a motivation factor that you're going to have to look at if you're the Ravens. Coming up though in the final part of the show, we'll dive into some more injury updates for the Ravens as we got the second injury report of the week. Some players returned to practice while others, of course, remained absent. Stay tuned, a lot coming up on the show. This episode is brought to you by Square. Your favorite neighborhood spots run on Square. There are certain businesses that truly make the neighborhood feel like home, whether it's the local sports bar packed on game days, the coffee shop that knows your order by heart, or the corner deli that's been serving your community for decades. These are the places that bring people together. When neighborhood businesses thrive, the whole neighborhood thrives. And there's a local spot in Baltimore, in Fed Hill, Be More Licks in Fed Hill, that absolutely comes alive every Sunday during football season. Fed Hill is jumping when the Ravens play on Sundays. Everyone's in the team colors. You got the energy, which is absolutely incredible. And it really feels like the entire area is cheering together. And those local spots are what makes a neighborhood feel like home. And so many of them run on Square. Square is a proud partner of more than 4 million neighborhood businesses around the world. You can go to square.com/go/LockedOnNFL to learn more. But before you do, go support your favorite neighborhood spot. You'll be happy you did. Square, see you in the neighborhood. Continuing on Locked On Ravens, Kevin Ostreicher still here with you on the Saturday bonus edition of the show. Again, I appreciate everybody for being here, taking a little time out of your weekend to come talk some Ravens with me on the show. Again, we're 5 days a week plus more here on Locked On Ravens. Monday through Friday is the regular show, but we have so much other content for you here, whether it be on the weekends, during game days, everything here, Ravens. So be sure to hit the like and subscribe button, video form and audio form. Be sure to tell a friend and tell a family member as well. If they want some daily Ravens coverage or a Ravens perspective on something, we have them covered just like we have you covered on Locked On Ravens. You can also follow me on social media, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, at KOstreicher34. Ravens injury report again on Friday is the second of the week because the Ravens play on Monday night. And we had some players return to practice and some others not go again. So Nate Wiggins and that whole situation again, we talked about that on yesterday's show. If you haven't checked out yesterday's show, be sure to do so. We kind of dive a little more into potentially what happened to Nate. He was back at practice. He had the non-participation on Thursday due to a groin injury, but luckily he was back limited on Thursday, which was great. John Jenkins was upgraded from limited to full. He had a personal issue. Rasheen Ali, his concussion, he was already upgraded from limited to full. So good sign for him for his availability for Monday. Other than that, Marlon Humphrey's second straight day of full participation, Isaiah Likely's second straight day of limited participation, but 3 players not practicing for the Ravens here. Nnamdi Madubuike with his neck injury. That's one to watch here, especially today on Saturday. You also have Patrick Ricard with his calf. Doesn't really feel like he'll be ready to play on Monday. The Ravens will probably want to get him into football shape. And, you know, if he even practices on, like, if he practices today, I probably wouldn't even pencil him in to play, honestly. And then Kyle Van Noy with his hamstring, the reports have said that he's not going to play for a couple weeks. So that, I think, is what is trending here. He, of course, did not practice on Friday. Now, the thing with Isaiah Likely is he talked about his injury status a little bit. He didn't commit to playing or not playing, but it's interesting because I think a lot of people, again, feel like Likely's just going to come in and take that tight end number 1 role, just snap it away from Mark Andrews, and that'll be that. But Qadry Ismail, former Ravens receiver, and I actually had a conversation about this. And I want to play a clip from our conversation because Hugh talks about not only the Ravens and what their plan should be for Likely as they work him back into their offense, but from Likely's perspective, what it actually means for him coming back and what this year means for him, obviously, being a contract year. We know the Ravens have Mark Andrews. They have Charlie Kolar. Obviously, from a stats perspective and from a game perspective, it hasn't been a super, eye-popping start for him from the stat sheet perspective. Bringing Likely back, I think everybody assumes he's going to be that tight end 1. He's going to soar ahead, which certainly could be possible. But what are your expectations personally based off the recovery for that injury? And is the Ravens maybe just want to ease him back in? I'm sure that's a possibility as well.
Oh, they absolutely need to ease him back in. I think for him, he's recognizing that, yeah, I got talent. I need to be out there. I need to, help out my team, the whole 9. But he also needs to recognize the bigger picture. This is a contract year. There were some contracts that were signed by other tight ends that set the market. And right now he's in a great position to get paid.
I think Q makes good points there where, again, easing him in number 1. But from the player perspective, again, I think that's not something that's talked about enough. From Likely's perspective himself, he also has to be feeling good. And I'm not saying he's not, right? But I just think in general, it's something that this is like more than just about him playing and getting out there. Like, I'm sure for him, it's like, man, I need to get out there with my guys, help my team win. Like, that's what you said. But there are other elements to it. Plus, sometimes you just need to get eased back in. It just is what it is. I think that, again, that assumption of just like, oh, this player's going to come back from injury, he's on the field, so that means he's able to play a full complement. That's not usually how it goes. So I would expect it to take a couple weeks when likely returns. Hopefully it will be on Monday, but if not, I'd assume at the very latest it'd be Kansas City. We will see. But again, they'll have to figure out how to kind of split those snaps. As I mentioned when talking to Q in that clip, Mark Andrews hasn't really had the big statistical impact that I think a lot of people were hoping for over the first couple weeks of the season. So I think that itch for likely among the fan base has certainly gotten stronger, as that hasn't really helped anything. But Mark Andrews, we talked about this a couple days ago. Mark Andrews clearly thinks that he is not starting slow. We talked with Cordell Woodland about that, and we read off what he had to say there. So it's going to be interesting. But the one, again, that I'm watching is Nnamdi Madubuike, that neck injury, 2 straight days and not practicing. Now, I don't think Madubuike necessarily has to practice to play in this game. I'm sure that if he doesn't practice again, maybe he'll be questionable. Maybe he'll be doubtful. I'm not sure how that's going to work. But, you don't really want to mess with any of these types of injuries, like hamstring, obviously, calf, obviously, even neck. Like that can be tricky and difficult. So got to play it cautious. If Madubuike is not able to go, I'd probably expect to see a much heavier dose of Aeneas Peebles, who I think has played really well these first couple of weeks. Obviously, no Van Noy is going to mean a lot of Mike Green. David Ajabo also probably going to get that active spot. And then for Ricard, obviously, it's going to continue to be Zaire Mitchell-Patton, although I think he only has one more elevation. I think he only has one more elevation, if I'm not mistaken. So we're going to have to figure out how that works for him. But at the end of the day, you can also use Charlie Kohler and a bunch of other guys as well. So interesting storylines all across the board here for the Ravens. We'll see how the injury situation shapes up today and what the designations are. And I assume we'll probably be back here tomorrow with another bonus episode talking Ravens football leading up to Monday night. So that's all I have for you here today on this bonus edition of Locked On Ravens. Thank you again for tuning into the show. On the way out, be sure to hit the like and subscribe button in video form and follow along in audio form for 5 days a week, plus more of daily Ravens coverage. And again, we'll probably be back here tomorrow with another bonus episode. So be sure to stay tuned, and I'll see you right back here tomorrow on Locked On Ravens.